The rain was relentless that October evening in Boston, drumming against the windows of my cramped apartment like a warning I refused to heed. I stood in the kitchen, the faint scent of garlic and basil rising from the lasagna I'd spent an hour preparing. A labor of love meant to surprise my fiancé, James Carter. He'd canceled our dinner plans again, another late night at Mass General, he'd said. His voice clipped over the phone. It wasn't unusual anymore, these absences, but tonight felt different. A restless ache gnawed at me, an intuition I couldn't name. So I packed the warm dish into a container, grabbed my umbrella, and headed into the storm, determined to bring a piece of home to him. The hospital's research wing was a labyrinth of sterile corridors, the kind of place that swallowed sound and time. I'd been here often enough to know my way. James liked showing me off at fundraisers, his charming designer fiancé with a knack for turning sterile spaces into something warm and human. The security guard gave me a familiar nod as I passed, my boots clicking against the polished floor. Light spilled from beneath James's office door, a golden thread in the dim hallway. I smiled to myself, imagining his surprise, maybe even a rare moment of gratitude amid his endless work. I didn't knock. That was my mistake, or maybe my salvation. The door swung open silently, and the world tilted beneath me. James wasn't hunched over charts or pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. He was perched on the edge of his desk, his white coat discarded, his hands gripping the waist of my best friend, Claire Donovan. Her arms were looped around his neck, her blonde hair cascading over his shoulder as they kissed with a fervor that left no room for misinterpretation. The lasagna slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a muted thud that jolted them apart. Their heads snapped toward me, eyes wide with mirrored shock. "Lila," James said, his voice steadying too quickly, the tone he used to calm frantic patients. He stepped away from Claire, smoothing his shirt as if that could erase what I'd seen. "This isn't." "Don't?" I cut him off, my voice a blade slicing through the air, sharp and eerily calm despite the chaos erupting inside me. "Don't you dare say it's not what it looks like." Claire's face drained of color, her lips parting but no words coming out. She just stood there, her silence a second betrayal, cutting deeper than James's hands on her body. I'd known her since our freshman year at RES, 10 years of shared secrets, late-night confessions, and dreams stitched into the fabric of our friendship. She'd been my maid of honor, for God's sake, the one who'd squealed over my engagement ring 6 months ago, promising to stand beside me as I became Mrs. Dear James Carter. "How long?" I asked, my hands trembling but my gaze unyielding. James hesitated, glancing at Claire as if she might supply the answer. "Lila, let's talk about this privately." "How long?" I repeated, each word a hammer striking glass. 3 months, he said finally, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if admitting it relieved some hidden burden. 3 months. Not a fleeting mistake, not a drunken lapse, but a deliberate, sustained deception. I stared at them, the man I'd planned to marry and the woman I'd trusted with my soul, and a cold clarity settled over me. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or just let me walk down the aisle oblivious?" "We were going to tell you," James said, his voice softening into that practiced bedside manner I'd once found comforting. "After the conference next week. We just needed time to figure out how." "Time?" I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You needed time to figure out how to break my heart rationally?" "Lila, I'm so sorry," Claire whispered, tears streaking her mascara. "We never meant to hurt you." The platitude ignited a spark of fury. "Never meant to hurt me? What did you think would happen when I found out my fiancé and my best friend were screwing each other behind my back? That I'd throw you a party?" James took a step toward me, hands outstretched. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Let me take you home and we can." "There's nothing to take home," I said, stepping back. "The wedding's off. Obviously." I turned to Claire, her tears now a silent accusation against my anger. "You deserve each other." I walked out, leaving the spilled lasagna on the floor, a fitting wreckage of the life I'd thought was mine. The rain soaked me through on the way back, but I didn't feel it. The tears didn't come until later, when I was on a train to my mother's house in Maine, watching Boston's skyline fade into the distance. They came then in a torrent, hot and unstoppable, as the reality of their betrayal carved itself into my bones. The months that followed were a fog of grief and logistics. Canceling a wedding isn't just a phone call, it's a dismantling. Venues, florists, caterers all met with my strained explanations. Personal reasons. My mother's guest room in Portland became my refuge. The engagement ring, a sapphire flanked by diamonds sitting untouched in its box on the dresser. I'd stare at it some nights, willing it to tell me where I'd gone wrong, how I'd missed the signs. Friends called, their voices hesitant, piecing together the truth from rumors and awkward sightings. "I saw them at a bar a few weeks ago," one admitted. "I thought you knew." A nurse from James's department confessed over the phone. "It was an open secret here. I figured you had some arrangement." The worst came from our old roommate, Sarah, who met me for coffee in a quiet cafe, her eyes brimming with guilt. "Claire brought him to our place when you were at design conferences. It started almost a year ago." A year. Not 3 months. A year of lies while I'd been picking out invitations and dreaming of a brownstone with James. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated erasure of me from their narrative. Then came the Instagram post 6 weeks after that rainy night. Claire's account lit up with a photo of her and James on a rooftop, the city glittering behind them, his arm around her waist, her hand flashing a diamond twice the size of mine. "Forever starts now," the caption read. "Engaged to my soulmate." Comments poured in, congratulations from colleagues, heart emojis from mutual friends who either didn't know or didn't care. It was a public rewriting of history, casting them as star-crossed lovers instead of the architects of my ruin. That image broke something in me, but not in the way I expected. Staring at their smug smiles, I didn't dissolve into tears. Instead, a fierce resolve ignited. I could let this define me, or I could burn it down and build something new. That day, I deleted my social media, applied to a graduate design program in Portland, Oregon, 3000 miles from Boston, and called a RISD professor with West Coast connections. I wasn't running away. I was choosing myself. Portland, Oregon, welcomed me with a gray drizzle that mirrored my mood. My new life began in a studio apartment with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, a far cry from the sleek lofts of Boston. The advanced design program at Pacific Northwest College of Art became my lifeline. I threw myself into it, channeling the chaos of my heart into sketches and blueprints. My professor's notice-me work took on a raw, emotional edge it had lacked before. "You're designing with your soul now," one said after a critique. "Don't lose that." Therapy came next, a reluctant decision spurred by a professor's ultimatum after I missed a deadline. "Dear." Ellen Voss didn't coddle me. She was a no-nonsense woman with sharp gray eyes and a knack for cutting through my defenses. "You let James define your worth," she said in our third session, her tone matter-of-fact. "And you gave Claire power over your belonging. Why did you hand them your identity?" The question stung, but it cracked open a truth I'd buried. I'd molded myself into James's perfect fiancé, supportive, polished, adaptable because I thought love demanded it. With Claire, I'd shared every fear, every dream, believing our bond was unbreakable. Their betrayal hadn't just taken my future. It had exposed how little of myself I'd claimed. Ellen didn't let me wallow. She gave me tools: journaling, meditation, questions that forced me to confront my patterns. One session she asked, "What do you want, Lila?" Not what James wanted, not what Claire approved of. "What do you want?" I couldn't answer at first. I'd spent so long fitting into their lives that my own desires felt foreign. But slowly they emerged. A career that mattered, a life built on my terms, a love that didn't require me to shrink. 6 months in, I joined a hiking group, a tentative step toward connection. The first trek was awkward, my words stilted, but by the third, I laughed at a guy named Ethan's terrible pun about moss. The sound startled me, genuine, unforced. I was still here, still capable of joy. The fog began to lift. 3 years after Boston, I stood in a 1-bedroom apartment I'd made my own, high ceilings and thrift store finds reflecting a life I'd crafted piece by piece. My firm, Harper Design, was small but growing, known for intuitive spaces that clients said felt like home. I'd dated here and there, coffee dates that fizzled, a few that lingered, but I wasn't chasing love. I'd learned to be whole alone. Then came Ethan Caldwell. We met through a project his law firm hired me to redesign their offices. He was the opposite of James, understated where James was flashy, attentive where James had been distracted. Our first meeting wasn't romantic, grilled me about my design choices, wanting to understand the why behind every curve and color. I liked that. He saw my work before he saw me. Dinner followed a month later, then a hike, then a quiet Sunday where he cooked me breakfast in his cluttered kitchen. He didn't dazzle me with charm. He disarmed me with honesty. When I told him about James and Claire, he didn't flinch. Their loss, he said simply, and I believed him. Our relationship grew steadily, rooted in mutual respect. He'd been burned to a divorce 5 years earlier when his ex-wife left for a freer life. We both knew love wasn't enough without trust and shared values. When he proposed 2 years later, over coffee on his balcony, I didn't say yes right away. I took 3 days to think, not because I doubted him, but because I needed to be sure I was choosing him for him, not for the idea of marriage. He waited, patient and unpressured. When I said yes, it was with a clarity I'd never known with James. 7 years after leaving Boston, an invitation arrived. The annual gala for the Portland Medical Alliance, tied to a hospital where I'd redesigned the oncology wing. James's name was on the board list, moved to Oregon, taken a prestigious role. I hesitated, the past flickering like a ghost. Ethan read my face. "You don't have to go," he said. "You've got nothing to prove." But I did gone it to confront, but to celebrate my work. The night glittered with wealth and prestige, the Grand Meridian Hotel's ballroom aglow with chandeliers. I wore a sapphire gown that hugged my frame, a quiet statement of the woman I'd become. Ethan was delayed by a case, leaving me to navigate the crowd alone. Then I saw her, Claire, her blonde hair swept into an elegant twist, a ruby gown clinging to her like a second skin. She hadn't aged the way I'd imagined. She was still striking, but there was a brittleness to her now, a tension in her smile. Our eyes met across the room and she approached, heels clicking like a countdown. "Lila Harper," she said, her voice the same melodic lilt that once soothed my fears. "It's been forever." "Claire," I replied, neutral, sipping my champagne. She air-kissed my cheeks, a hollow gesture. 10 years, right? God, you look amazing. Philip's head of thoracic surgery here now. We've got a place on the coast. Busy life. She flashed her ring, a gaudy thing that screamed status. "Good for you," I said, unmoved. She was fishing, waiting for me to flinch. "And you?" Her eyes flicked to my bare left hand. "Still flying solo, I see." I smiled, feeling Ethan's familiar presence behind me before he spoke. "Actually," I said, turning as his hand settled on my back, "meet my husband." Claire's face froze as she registered Ethan Caldwell, tall, steady, and the senior partner at Caldwell and Reed, the firm suing James for falsifying surgical data. Patients had died. Dozens more suffered. Her champagne trembled in her hand. "Claire," Ethan said smoothly, extending a hand. "We've spoken. My office has been trying to schedule James's deposition." Her composure cracked. "I didn't know you two," she stammered. 5 years married," I said, leaning into Ethan. "I designed his firm's offices. He fell for my blueprints first." The irony hit her like a slap. James had prized my connections. Ethan valued my mind. Claire's smile returned, strained. "Small world." "Not really," Ethan said. "We're just in the same circles now." She excused herself, fleeing to James across the room. I watched her whisper to him, his shoulders stiffening. He turned, our eyes locking briefly, his narrowing, then widening as he saw Ethan. He raised his glass in a curt nod before steering Claire away. "That was satisfying," I admitted to Ethan later on the terrace. "You're stronger than you think," he said, brushing hair from my face. The next morning, a text from Claire. "Can we meet? Hotel Cafe, 30 minutes. Important." I showed Ethan. "Your call," he said. "Curiosity one." She looked drained, no trace of last night's polish. "I owe you a real apology," she began. "What we did was cruel. I've lied to myself for years, pretending we set you free. Seeing you last night happy, holy, it hit me. You won despite us." "And James?" I asked. "His career's collapsing. The lawsuit, it's all true. People died because he cut corners. I helped hide it." I didn't gloat. "I'm sorry it's come to this," I said sincerely. "Don't be. It's justice." She paused. Are you happy, Lila? Yes, I said. Are you? No, she whispered. Not for a long time. We parted with no promises, just a quiet understanding. Back in Portland, life resumed me firm thrived, designing healing spaces that won awards, reflecting my own journey. James lost his license. Claire faded from view. Their story no longer mattered. Years later, standing in the Vestal Centera monument to my transformation, I knew the truth. The darkest chapters don't define us. What we built from them does. And I built a life authentic, meaningful mine.
If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.